Welcome to Unbound, the podcast with Beth Curry, author, storyteller, and survivor. This is where books meet real life, where Beth reads chapters from her work and breaks free from the traditional audiobook format, diving deeper into the personal experiences, lessons, and liberation behind every page. Nothing is off limits. Let's get unbound.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Unbound. Off script. It's an off script episode. Usually we're here to kind of unpack the heavy things. The stuff that sticks to your ribs, dementia, cold cases, the intricate, often painful architecture of the human mind. But today I've been defeated. I've been defeated by a shirt. It started with a simple question about that loop of fabric on the back of a men's dress shirt, a locker loop, they call it. And instead of answering the question and moving on with my life like a sane person, I fell. I fell into a rabbit hole so deep, so unnecessarily detailed, that I've spent the last few hours staring at my own wardrobe like it's a crime scene. And now I'm spending time here with you because I feel the need to talk about this. There's no conspiracy here. No one's missing. But if you think about it, our clothes are essentially museum exhibits for problems that haven't existed for, 300 years. We're walking around draped in these features. We're wearing the ghosts of dead sailors and medieval swordsmen and Victorian miners. So off script today, I'm going to talk about why your pants are lying to you. I want to start with that loop again, that locker loop. Apparently back in the day, East Coast sailors didn't have the luxury of IKEA wardrobes. They had pegs. You hook the loop on a peg and the shirt stays off the floor and everyone's happy. And then in the 60s, there was this brand that decided to bring this to the Ivy League, because we're so fancy. Suddenly every guy at Yale is walking around with a little fabric handle on his shoulder blades, basically, right? And because humans are incapable of leaving things alone, it pretty much became a dating app. So if you were taken, you would snip the loop off, like a literal unlooping of yourself from the market. I think it's so ridiculous. If you were single, the loop stayed. So girls would know, and they would supposedly try to rip them off guys they liked. Like, can you imagine? The height of mid-century courtship was property damage. I like you so much. I'm going to compromise the structural integrity of your Oxford button down, sir. It's a wonder any of us were born, really. Speaking of structure, if you look at the very bottom buttonhole of that same shirt, you might notice something. All of the holes are vertical, but the bottom one, it's horizontal. Why? Because the fashion industry knows you're going to sit down. And when you sit down, your hips expand. Don't deny it, it's physics. And that bottom button takes the brunt of the hole. So the horizontal hole allows the button to slide without ripping the fabric. It's basically the shirt's way of saying, I've got you, buddy, go ahead and have that dessert. But pretty fascinating. Something I've never thought about before. Your jeans. So there's this thing called a watch pocket. You know that one, that little tiny rectangular pocket nestled kind of inside the right front pocket. It's too small for a smartphone. It's too deep for a thumb. It's perfect for a loonie or a toonie if you're Canadian. But it's perfectly sized for a pocket watch. 1873. That's when Levi Strauss put it there. So we've been carrying around this dedicated storage unit for a 19th century timepiece for like a bajillion years now, 150 years. Why? Because tradition is a powerful drug. It's a legacy feature. It's the save icon of the clothing world or something. We all know what it is, even if we've never seen, the original in the wild. And while you're looking down there, look at the copper rivets those little metal nubs on the corners of the pockets. So in the 1870s, miners were working so hard, their pockets were literally falling off their pants. Can you imagine? I mean, kids these days, they have no idea what working means, let alone working so hard. But think about that. A tailor named Jacob Davis, I'd say he's probably the unsung hero of denim. He started hammering copper rivets into the stress points to keep the seams from exploding. Today, you probably aren't mining for gold. You're more likely mining for your car keys in a Starbucks parking lot. You don't need the rivets, but without them, they aren't jeans. They're just blue trousers. Trousers, what a word. We've turned an industrial safety feature into a fashion requirement. And the color, indigo, why? Why are this color? Like, why? The reason that I've read is because indigo dye doesn't actually penetrate the thread. It just sits on the outside. So every time you move, a tiny bit of dye kind of chips off. And back then, that meant that the dirt went with it. So blue jeans were basically self-cleaning at the time. Or they were really good at hiding the fact that you haven't washed them in 3 weeks. Anyway, so buttons and cuffs I want to talk about too. So this is where it gets super spicy. The buttons. Men's buttons are on the right and women's are on the left. Why? Is it biological? No. It's weaponry and wealth. If you were a man in the 13th century, you were likely carrying a sword on your left hip. You draw with your right hand. If your jacket button left over right, your sword hilt would snag on the flap of your shirt as you drew it. And in a duel, hang on, my shirt is stuck is usually the last thing you'd ever say, right? So buttons on the right, survival. Wealthy women in the Victorian era didn't dress themselves. They were dressed by maids. And since most maids were right-handed, it was easier for them to button a garment if the buttons were on the maid's right, which is the wearer's left. So if your buttons are on the left, you're basically flexing that you have a servant, even if you're currently standing in a Target. And then there's the surgeon's cuff. I actually learned about this from a surgeon, which is funny because whatever. If you have a fancy suit where the sleeve buttons actually work, congratulations, because you are dressed for a battlefield. Military doctors used to perform surgery in their uniforms, and they needed to roll their sleeves up to keep the evidence of their work off the fabric. Now we just use those buttons to show people how much we spent on a blazer. But yeah, from trauma surgery to business casual in just 200 years, I guess. Can't talk about clothing without talking about the pom-pom. And you know what I mean. You've seen them on beanies. They're cute. They're fluffy. They were originally safety helmets. The French Navy put them on sailors' hats because the ceilings below deck were dangerously low. And if the ship lurched and you hit your head, the pom-pom acted as a buffer. It was a warning squish before the concussion. So we're walking around with 18th century naval safety equipment on our heads while we drink our lattes wearing our Uggs. And that crease down the front of your dress pants, that wasn't a designer's vision, it was a shipping error. In the late 1800s, pants were folded flat and pressed into crates for months-long journeys across the ocean, and by the time they were unpacked, the crease was permanent. And people just decided that it looked intentional. So we've been ironing a shipping malfunction into our trousers for over a century because we're too polite to admit it was a mistake. Ridiculous. And sewn shut pockets. You buy a new suit and the pockets are stitched closed. People think it's a fake pocket, but it's not. It's there to keep the jacket from sagging while it's on the rack. It's like retail Spanx or something like that. So snip the thread, people. Live your life. Open the pocket. So what did we learn today on this very, very off-script episode of Unbound? We learned that we're all walking museums. We're wearing a sword fighter's shirt and a sailor's hat and miner's rivets and a servant's button layout. We spend so much time on the show talking about how to let go of the past and how to heal from things that don't serve us anymore, and yet here we are still carrying a pocket for a watch we don't own and a loop for a locker we haven't used since 1964. Maybe the past isn't just in our heads. Maybe it's in our seams. Anyway, next time I'm going to get back to the heavy stuff, I promise. We'll talk about the mind, the memory, maybe cold case or two, I don't know. But for now, just look at your sleeve. Is that a surgeon's cuff? Anyway, I'm Beth. This has been a very off-script episode of Unbound. Go snip your pocket threads. It's time to move on. And seriously, though, why the pom-pom? Sailors are weird.
Thanks for listening to Unbound with Beth Curry. Join the conversation in the Facebook group or visit authorbethcurry.com. Want to support the show? Head to ko-fi.com/unbound podcast. Until next time, stay unbound.